Yeah, another day of interesting weather here in the Chattanooga Valley. Had some blue skies earlier. Now it's going back to being cloudy. They're saying it's going to rain some more. It's currently 76 degrees. It's just been crazy weather all day long, and for the last several days, actually, which is kind of funny because I just got back from California, and in California, they have the same weather almost every day. Sun, and more sun because they're in the middle of a drought. Well, of course, that's part of the problem is, weather has been in the news so much here lately. They keep having different things with the United Nations. Obama's been talking to the United Nations again about the weather and what are we going to do about it and how, well, we got to do something. Of course, they've been saying that now for how many years? Back when I was in high school, back in the early 1970s, everybody was running around all scared to death. Oh, we've got an ice age coming. Oh, we're all going to freeze to death. Oh, we're all going to be moving to Mexico to get away from the icebergs that'll be coming down. Well, then in 1980s, they had where global warming and rising sea levels will wipe out entire nations off the map by the year 2000. 1990s. We only had 5 years left to save the rainforests because once the rainforests were all killed off, we were going to run out of oxygen and we were all going to die. Then in the year 2000, they were talking about how the Himalayan glaciers will all be gone in 10 years. Then that snow would soon be a thing of the past. There would be no more snow anywhere on the entire planet because of global warming. Even Al Gore was talking about how the Arctic would be ice-free by the year 2013, which was 2 years ago. Global warming was going to cause more hurricanes. Well, wait a minute. Back in 2007, didn't they say that global warming would cause fewer hurricanes? Now, which is it? Are they causing more hurricanes or fewer hurricanes? But then in 2014, the president comes out and says the science is settled. Everybody that knows anything knows that global warming is real and it's here. And the science is settled. Ooh, man, oh, man. It starts getting to the point where you don't know who to talk to. Well, a ex-NASA climatologist, Dr. Roy Spencer, says, in the 3 decades that I've been in the climate research business, and for those of you in North Alabama, 3 decades, that's 30 years. It's been clear that politics has been the driving force behind the global warming movement. Well, I don't even like saying global warming movement, because they never can get their story straight. Is it global warming? Is it global cooling? They say, well, it's extreme weather. No, I think it's just called weather. Well, anyway, this climatologist, Dr. Roy Spencer, said, I will admit the science has always supported the view that slowly increasing carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere from burning of fossil fuels should cause some warming. But the view that this would in any way be a bad thing for humans or for nature has been a politically driven urban legend. I mean, even the Pope was getting in on this while he was doing his visit here. I mean, I thought the Pope believed in God. So is the Pope trying to say that global warming is caused by man or is caused by God? I mean, because if man is doing it and God lets it be done, so even the Pope, you kind of got to start wondering where's he coming from on this. Well, the problem is that there's a desperate need for politicians to connect human carbon dioxide emissions to a warming planet so they can impose laws. They can have regulations, sanctions upon the guilty parties. Oh, we've got the carbon tax credits. We must do something. We've got to raise the car mileage levels, and then they always have some unattainable thing going on. Here in America, they start putting all these different emissions control devices on smokestacks and everything like that. Well, okay, that's good. Yeah, we need to have cleaner emissions and whatnot. But the problem is that every politician that comes along has to one-up the last politician, or he feels like he's not doing anything. So the Environmental Protection Agency has been getting in on this act, and what they're doing is they've now run several businesses out of business by tweaking the levels to where they are literally unobtainable. It doesn't matter how much money you spend, you can't meet their goals because they're unrealistic. Meanwhile, in nations like China, Russia, and India, just to name some of the top ones, they just go churning right along, not bothering with any sort of emissions controls because they can, and they're overtaking our economy because of that. Well, that's why we need to be skeptical. We need to keep in mind that none of the catastrophes predicted by the alarmists have come to fruition. The oceans rising, the fewer hurricanes, more hurricanes. Well, the fact is we haven't had a really major hurricane hit the United States in a number of years now. Well, we're getting warmer. The temperatures are rising and rising and rising. Well, actually, if you look at the true data, not stuff that's been fudged and mishandled, the true data says that we haven't had rising temperatures in several years now. In fact, almost 18 years now. Al Gore was saying, oh, the Arctic ice would all be gone. Well, that's not true either. You just left and right. They come up with all these dire scenarios where we've got to do something right now. And none of it has come true. In fact, the only predictions that have stood the test of time are from those that were skeptics. But it's the alarmists who make the most noise and gain national attention. They jump up and down and yell and scream, you're going to die, you're going to die. And then when nobody dies, nobody thinks to point and say anything about, hey, what happened? How come we didn't die? Everybody's just so relieved they didn't die that they just forget about it. They tell us that climate change is settled science and that this is the consensus among scientists. Well, that's not true. Science is never settled. Wasn't it settled science that the earth was flat? Wasn't it settled science that the earth was the center of the universe and that the sun revolved around the earth? There's always been settled science, and it's always been wrong. Science is never settled, and the truth is not determined by a consensus. If 100 people are told something and 99 of them are wrong, that doesn't make it right. It just means that most of the people are wrong. Because there's several important points to consider on all this. There hadn't been any warming for nearly 18 years, and NASA itself admits this. Even a Dr. David Whitehouse of the Global Warming Policy Forum says there have been no statistically significant warming trends since 1997. 97. Not only did NASA fail to mention their uncertainty in the original press release, but they also failed to mention that the record supposedly set in 2014, which was saying that it was the hottest year on record, that it was actually only 0.02 of a degree greater than the previous record, which had been set in 2010. And that was with a margin of error of approximately 0.01 degree. Well, 0.02 of a degree isn't exactly a heat wave. Life goes on just as it has for thousands of years. There's been periods of warmth in the past. I mean, they find evidence of plants, green plants growing in both the Arctic and the Antarctic. At points in the past, the Earth was much warmer. Plants got huge. There was more oxygen in our atmosphere, 1 million years ago than there is now. But there's also been ice ages. In fact, we're just now coming out of what's called a mini ice age. And that's part of the reason why maybe the temperatures have gone up a little bit. Remember Washington crossing the Delaware? How he was having to dodge all the ice chunks? They had what was called a mini ice age back in the late 1700s and the early 1800s. It's called weather. It's a fluctuation. It gets hot, it gets cold. It gets hot, it gets cold. It's done that for literally 1 billion years here on the planet Earth. In fact, it not only happens here on Earth, it happens on other planets too. They just discovered evidence of flowing water on Mars. Well, Mars cycles. Mars has cycling weather just like the Earth. Sometimes it's warm enough there that they've got flowing water. Sometimes it's so cold that all they have is ice caps, the Martian ice caps. Scientists have known about the ice caps for, decades and decades. But you know what? I don't care how big your SUV is. Your emissions are not causing running water on Mars. I think there's a little thing up in the sky that does that might have some influence on all of that. It's called the sun. The sun has cycles. The sun gets hot. The sun gets colder. And when it gets a little bit hotter, we get hotter. When it gets a little bit colder, we get colder. That's part of the cycle of nature. We don't need any unnecessary laws and regulations that are designed specifically to infringe upon our freedoms and bring economic harm not only upon us, but upon our entire country. So the next time you start hearing hysteria over climate change, think about, first off, who's saying it? What do they have to gain? What do they have to lose? Employ a healthy dose of skepticism and listen to what those on the other side are saying. For every argument, there's a counter argument. If they're saying something, see what somebody else is saying. We should be good stewards of the environment and care for the planet. I totally believe that. That's what the whole thing of being a conservative is supposed to be about, conserving nature. And yes, I think we need to reduce pollution and maintain clean air and water. But we can do this with common sense solutions, not the drastic actions demanded by politicians who know very little about science overall, because some climate change activist is jumping up and down. Climate change activists like Al Gore. Ever since he was vice president, Al Gore has been looking to make his mark. He couldn't become president, so he's been running around, jumping up and down for over a decade, yelling about global climate change or global warming. He says he's been saying for over a decade that 98% of the scientific community believes in man-made climate change. Well, let me ask you a question. First off, 98% of the scientific community. Do you realize how many millions of people make up the scientific community? I mean, we're not talking about just global weather people here. We're talking about people that are like nuclear scientists. We're talking about medical scientists. We're talking about, all sorts of different people, talking about people studying outer space. And you're not talking about just the United States. You're talking about other nations like China, India, Japan, Even little small countries have scientists. I mean, look at Iraq and Iran. Iran's got their nuclear program going. Well, they've got scientists. You don't think that if 98% of all of the scientists believe this, that maybe some of these other countries would be doing something about it too? But the only nation that's really jumping up and down to a large extent is the United States. The other countries, they're all saying, yeah, y'all go ahead and do that. Y'all need to get all this money and you need to give it to us. They're always willing to agree when the United States thinks they need to give money to somebody because they know they're going to be the somebody getting it. Well, anyway, the 98% came from a 2009 American Geophysical Union survey that had a 2-question survey that was sent to not 98% of all the scientific community, but was sent to a little over 10,000 earth scientists by just 2 researchers at the University of Illinois. So you have this survey that was sent to 10,000 scientists. 3,000 came back. But of those 3,000 that came back, only 77 of them were by peer-reviewed climate scientists. Of those 77, only 75 agreed with both questions. So they say that, well, 75 of the 77 equates to 98%. Well, that was, of that respondent. There was less than 3,000 that actually replied. But somehow that 77 and 75 are now representative of every single scientist in the entire world. And that makes it settled science. Meanwhile, they must have been using Common Core for that or something like that. How else are you going to figure out that, well, you've got over 1 million scientists in the entire world. They sent it out to 10,000. 3,000 came back, 77, 75. The answer would be 98%. That sounds like Common Core right there, if you ask me. Meanwhile, since 1998, more than 31,000 scientists have announced that there is no convincing scientific proof that human release of carbon dioxide, methane, or other greenhouse gases is causing or will cause in the foreseeable future catastrophic heating of the Earth's atmosphere and disruption of the Earth's climate. So let's see, we've got 77. Oh, wait a minute. No, it's not 77. 75 that say yes, and you've got 31,000 that say no, but 98% of the scientific community is the figure they're using to quote. Somehow 75 is not even close to 98% of even the 31,000 scientists who said no. In fact, one of the founders of Greenpeace, Dr. Patrick Moore, who incidentally has a Bachelor of Science in Biology and a doctorate in ecology, who left Greenpeace after they started going so totally left-wing and left them, he said, I am skeptical humans are the main cause of climate change and then it will be catastrophic in the near future. There is no scientific proof of this hypothesis, yet we are told the debate is over and the science is settled. Remember, Al Gore claimed that the seas were going to rise and islands would disappear. He said this in the movie, An Inconvenient Truth. Well, actually, the High Court of London identified multiple errors in Gore's movie that were so outrageous that it caused a major upheaval when they wanted to show the movie about climate change in English secondary schools. And people took it to court to get it stopped because there were so many errors. This was being presented as truth, And they were showing in court that they were lies. Global warming is on its deathbed. It seems that American people are not falling for Al Gore's lies. A new Gallup poll revealed that only 32% of the public are worried about it. 32% of the public. Yet you read magazines and newspapers like Time or USA Today. The headline is still settled science. The debate is over. But 32% are all that believe it. That's not even a majority of the American public, but yet they keep trying to claim it's settled science. There's been no warming for 2 decades now. You know, Al Gore said that Arctic ice would be gone by 2013. And that from 2008 to 2012, it grew by 50%, and then it grew another 30% in the year 2013. Meanwhile, even when the Arctic ice was going down, guess what, folks? The Antarctic ice was growing. You know, it just moved. It didn't go away. It just moved. And now it's coming back. You know, it's called a cycle. That's what happens. Then they started finding out that scientists were fudging the data so that they could get more government grants. You know, if you have to change the results to match what you want as a preconceived notion, that's not scientific evidence. It's not settled science. It's called cheating and lying. But yet, we keep being told, not just by Al Gore, but by Barack Obama, that it's settled science and that anybody who doesn't believe it needs to have stuff done to them. And they come up with all sorts of different things that they think we ought to do it. Meanwhile, not only did Al Gore recently buy beachfront property after claiming the oceans are going to rise 20 feet. Really? Well, if you're so sure they're rising, why did you buy it? But get this. We are so sure the oceans are rising that Barack Obama just bought property in Hawaii that is oceanfront to retire to after he leaves the White House. The old Magnum PI mansion. Barack Obama bought that to retire to, even though he claims the oceans are supposed to be rising. Oh, man. You know how to tell when a politician's lying? His mouth is moving. And even if we are truly changing the weather, do you really think the government is going to do a better job of fixing it? The government never fixes anything. They just make it worse. So much for the war on weather. We'll be back after these words.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Expect mostly cloudy skies through the nighttime, turning a little cooler overnight, lows 60 to 62. Now for your Thursday as well as Friday, expecting lots of clouds, a few scattered showers, but temperatures will be much cooler out there. You'll definitely notice it with highs staying into the 60s. Mammograms, bone density tests, and many other basic health screenings will be available at Abba's House Health Fair Tuesday, October 13th from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. For more, abbashouse.com/health fair. And I'm WDEF News 12 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Core on AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Costa, host of the Costa Report, every Sunday at 9 a.m. My guest this week was the former Secretary of Education, Mr. William Bennett, whose controversial new book titled America the Strong is getting ready to hit bookstores this month. Don't miss a thought-provoking one-on-one conversation with William
You give
Bennett.
us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Expect mostly cloudy, warm, and humid weather out there through the evening hours. Could see a stray shower move through, but not too much. Overnight tonight, turning a little cooler, lows near 62. For Thursday and Friday, lots of clouds, still unsettled. Much cooler, though, with a few scattered showers and highs staying into the 60s. Tired of the pressures and hassles of car shopping? Come see why more people are making the short drive to Jackson Chevrolet Buick GMC in Lafayette or online at jacksongm.com. Jackson Chevy Buick GMC in Lafayette. And I'm WDEF News 12 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Hoare. On AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
This is America Now with Meghan McCain.
Al Gore running is crazy. You're flying around in your private jet all over the world, and you want average Americans to care about the environment. Don't you think you should be doing your part as well?
Meghan McCain, weekdays at 7 p.m.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
Fox News Talk 1240.
Hey, all you gun enthusiasts! Carter Shooting Supply has just bought a crazy load of guns and is having a crazy huge sale event. Going on now, a huge inventory of Smith & Wesson, Glock, Ruger, and Taurus all on sale. Taurus guns have a mail-in rebate for $25 to $50. All long guns and all ammo on sale too, just in time for hunting season. Come in and take advantage of this crazy huge sale event. Going on now at Carter Shooting Supply, or shop from home by going to cartershootingsupply.com. Highway 58, Harrison. Check our prices before you buy.
Hi, I'm David Tulis, inviting you to make the move with me 9 to 11 a.m. weekdays here at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. The David Tulis Show, featuring Nooganomics.com for Chattanooga and beyond. 9 to 11 a.m. weekdays.
Are you tired of feeling like just another account number to your financial advisor? Try something refreshingly different. Call Edward Jones Financial Advisor Patrick Neal in Hickson at 870-7894. Edward Jones, making sense of investing. Member SIPC.
Tired of insurance companies? Tired of doctors that won't spend time with you? Do something different. Leave the sick care model of medicine and come to Dr. Danielle Mitchell, the Chattanooga Sports Institute and Center for Health, where we're interested in long-term health solutions, not the quick fixes. Come see me, Dr. Danielle Mitchell, at the Chattanooga Sports Institute and Center for Health. I'm all about the long-term healthcare solutions and doing what's best. On the web, you can find me at ChattanoogaSportsInstitute.com. That's ChattanoogaSportsInstitute.com. Or call us at 875-1005, 875-1005, or find us on social media, Facebook, Dr. Danielle Mitchell, or the ChattanoogaSportsInstitute.com. Let's go, ya!
It's Rick Davis Gold and Diamonds half-off remounting party going on right now. Rick Davis Gold and Diamonds half-off remounting party is an affordable way to revitalize your jewelry. Don't miss the party going on today at Rick Davis half-off remounting party. Give your diamond ring a fresh new look or a new design, as Rick's Gold and Diamonds will fix it quickly, or maybe even while you wait. Rick Davis Gold and Diamonds, 40 years of service, 5301 Brainerd Road, 5301 Brainerd Road. Call 580-2587, 580-2587 for Rick Davis Gold and Diamonds. An affordable way to revitalize your jewelry. The half-off party's going on today, so don't miss it. At Rick Davis Gold and Diamonds. Rick Davis Gold and Diamonds, 5301 Brainerd Road. Call 580-2587. Rick Davis Gold and Diamonds.
Compass Media Network's coverage of the NFL. Hi, this is Jerry Recco. Join Kevin Ray, Danny White, and myself for all the action.
Hot News Talk 1240.
If it's the NFL, it's right here.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
Hot News Talk 1240.
Welcome back to Hot News Radio. You can actually watch us on our new Hot News Cam. That's right. We've got our Hot News Cam where you can actually watch us do our shows. You can watch David in the morning. You can watch Russell at lunch. You can watch me right now. Just go to hotnewsradio.com Go to Hot News Talk Radio on YouTube. You can even go to Hot News Talk Radio on Twitter. You know, you can get us all sorts of different ways. You can get up-to-the-date news on Twitter just 24 hours a day. We're always there because we've got you covered. Well, speaking of hot news, a little bit of interesting news today. Kelly Renee Glissendanner was executed in Georgia this morning. She was the only woman on Georgia's death row, and she was executed for the 1997 slaying of her husband. And this really surprised a lot of people that she was actually executed. You know, this is something that a lot of people have been saying for a long time, is that, oh, the death penalty is going away. You know, we need to get rid of the death penalty. The thing that cracks me up is that you hear all these different people talking about all the different reasons we need to get rid of the death penalty, and then they're surprised when murder rates keep going up. I mean, Illinois doesn't have the death penalty. In Chicago is just murder after murder, murder after murder, shooting after shooting, shooting after shooting. You know, if there's no real punishment, people have no reason to worry. You know, they'd given all sorts of different reasons why she didn't need to be executed. They said, well, even 2 of her 3 kids thought she ought to get leniency. You know what I just heard? 1 of her kids didn't. You know, I worked for the state prison system in Texas. I've said that on the air several times. I was a carpenter foreman there. But I worked around these inmates all day. And there are some people in this world that if there is not a good reason to do something, they're not going to do it. If there's not a good reason for them to obey the law, they're going to do whatever they want. You want to call them a sociopath, you know, or whatever. There's some people that they just, whatever, for whatever reason, something's wrong in their head. And they're going to do whatever they want to do, and they don't care about the rest of society. They don't care about other people. If it takes hurting somebody for them to feel good, they're going to hurt somebody. And the only thing that's going to keep them from doing that is a good, harsh punishment. Now, going from there, there is no harsher punishment than the death penalty. And that's one that's harsh enough that it might make some people think twice about doing something. Well, what about life in prison without the possibility of parole? Okay, so now you've got a bad guy locked in jail for the rest of his life with no incentive to be good in jail. Are we going to put him in solitary confinement for their entire life? Well, you can't do that. That's inhumane. You know, that's one of the things that especially states like California are all about. They want to make the inmates as comfortable as possible. They give them cable TV. They give them meals that are really nice. You know, they let the male inmates grow their hair long and grow beards, and they let them do this and they let them do that. Why? It's almost like they're not even in jail. Wait a minute. I thought they were in jail for punishment. I thought that was supposed to be part of the process. There again, if they're not being punished, why are we even going through this? Why are we even putting them in jail if they might as well not be in jail? If they're going to continue doing the same thing that they were doing. And when you put bad guys in jail, there are some good people in prison that are affected by that. You have not just the guards, You also have people like school teachers. You have clerical positions. You have nurses and doctors. You have librarians. They had a riot in Texas back in the 80s where a preacher was seriously wounded and 3 female librarians were killed by inmates in an escape attempt. What are you going to do? I mean, you know, these people have no concern for human life other than their own. That's the thing about a sociopath. They don't care if you live or die. Their only concern is that they live. And we're not talking about people that are mentally ill, people that are mentally challenged. That's a whole different story. We talked a little bit about that the other day. We're talking about people that are just bad. And there are people like that out there. The only reason that they have for doing anything is for self-pleasure. And there again, like pedophiles, rapists, if it takes hurting somebody for them to get pleasure, they will do it. And you will never, ever change that. So now you're going to put them in jail for life with no hope of getting out. So if there's no hope of getting out, there's no reason for them to mitigate what they're doing. That's going to put the other people around them and even the other inmates in danger. Just so some liberal can sleep good at night knowing that, well, we made their lives as nice as we could considering where they're at. Well, meanwhile, the same liberals want to kill innocent babies who didn't hurt anybody. And really, when you look at it in the long run, a humane execution is exactly that. It is humane for everybody involved. One of the reasons they say that the death penalty is becoming less and less used, I mean, 2/3 of the states have had no execution since 2010. They say that one of the reasons for this is because of not just how much money it costs, but because of the anguish that it puts everybody involved. Not just the victims' families, but even the accused people's families, how much it puts them through. Well, all that tells me is that we don't need to get rid of the death penalty. We need to figure out a better way of doing it. I'm tired of where you have a guy that walks into a bank and there's cameras all around the bank. And they show him coming in. He walks up to the security guard, shoots the security guard, and starts to rob the bank. The security guard's life wasn't anything to him. He goes over, he gets the money, and he turns around to walk out, but one of the tellers hits the little button up underneath and sends out an alarm. The police come roaring up. He comes out of the bank with his gun in one hand, a bag of money in the other hand, and they draw down on him. And he gives up. They've got him on film, killing the guy. They've got him on film, robbing the bank. They've got multiple witnesses showing him walking out of the bank with the money and with the gun. But all of a sudden, he's the suspect. No, he ain't a suspect. And for us to treat him otherwise says something about our society. When you put them in jail, we need to make sure that all the evidence that is useful and good is used. That includes DNA, any sort of scientific evidence. We always see all these CSI shows and whatnot. Any and all information needs to be used on both sides, not only to prove that they're guilty, but to prove any sort of innocence that they might have, because there are innocent people that have been put in jail for a variety of reasons. Sometimes it's because of corruption of law enforcement. In which case, law enforcement needs to be put in jail. If they're breaking the law, it doesn't matter what they did or who they were. If they broke the law, they need to be in jail. But if they break the supreme law of killing other people or causing other people to die, now they're starting to put their own lives at jeopardy. And once they realize that, maybe they won't be doing that. Meanwhile, like I was saying, what about their families? They're not doing these court cases because of what they're putting all the people through. Having to relive it, having to go through not one, not two, but sometimes 5 and 6 different cases that can drag on for decades. When everybody knows they're guilty, when they've got the video right there of him coming out of the bank, when they've got the video right there of him shooting somebody. If there's any sort of knowledge or lack of knowledge on whether somebody is actually guilty, that's one thing. But when you know that somebody is a stone cold killer, you know, somebody like this Tsarnaev, who was involved with the Boston bombing, federal court took him to and convicted him, and they gave him the death penalty. But does anybody really suspect that he'll ever get it? The feds haven't killed anybody in a pretty good while. I think Terry McAuliffe might have been the last one. You know, with the Oklahoma bombings. They cost us money, and more money over trivial stuff that has absolutely nothing to do with guilt. And then they say, well, the courts are too expensive. It costs too much money. Isn't that what the liberals always do? They pick at you and pick at you and pick at you and cost you money and cost you money and cost you money until you eventually just have to give up and quit because you can't afford it anymore. And that's what they're doing with the death penalty. They're making it so expensive over stupid stuff. Then they say it's too expensive. They delay it and delay it and delay it, and then they say it takes too long. I like Ron White. Ron White, the comedian, said, you know, most states are doing away with the death penalty. In Texas, they put in an express lane. And that's actually kind of true because in Texas, which does still do the death penalties, although not near like what they used to, but one of the things that Texas does is they've got an express lane where if an inmate is tired of being on death row, he can request to be sent to the front of the line and expedite his execution. Which is actually not a bad idea because isn't keeping somebody in prison, especially on death row, which has, you know, fewer things to be able to do than just the regular population of inmates, although you'd still be surprised at how much death row inmates are allowed to do. But it's not an enjoyable life overall. And after 10 years, 20 years of being on death row, and there's people that's on there that long, eventually they just want to just get it over with. And they can execute them. But meanwhile, for everyone that wants to do that, there's 20 or 30 or 40 or 100 that want to live out their miserable lives for just as long as they can. And if they have to hurt somebody or kill somebody while they're in prison, they're going to do that. Whether it's the guard or whether it's maybe the nurse coming around to check on them every day. Assault them. Do whatever they can to them. I've seen that happen. For no other reason than just being mean. You look these people in the eye, they've got absolutely nothing there. They're not human. They're not animals. I don't know what they are, but there's just some sort of spark in their eyes that's missing. They're sociopaths. You're never going to cure them. You're never going to change them. No matter what you do, no matter what any liberal does, you're never going to fix them. They will always be a danger. So what's the humane thing to do? Keep them alive where they're in a cage for the rest of their life? Well, the liberals tell us that's not good. well, we can't just let them go because they're going to go out there and kill somebody. I've literally seen inmates being released that you knew were going to go out and somebody was going to die. Either they were going to kill somebody or somebody was going to have to kill them to save their own life. You knew that because of the type of people that they were. Well, okay, do you put them in a supermax facility, which is becoming kind of popular these days? Well, the liberals all run around saying that that's inhumane. Meanwhile, the victims' families, they know that the person that killed their loved one is still alive. What about the crook's own family, the criminal's own family? Suppose they have children. Those children have to grow up knowing that their dad or their mom, as this last case, is in prison for doing something, and they don't have any closure. They're not dead, but they're not really alive either because they're in prison. And that affects the extended family, their mothers, their fathers, their children, their aunts, their uncles. Somebody comes up and says, whatever happened to, what's his name? Well, you could just say, he died. I'd rather not go into it, but he died. But no, you can't say that because they're still alive. They're in prison. Well, do you then start saying, they're on death row? Well, that's something that you don't really want to start celebrating either, So it affects the families themselves. Everybody's being punished at this point. Everybody but the liberals, who are the ones that are dragging it out, costing everybody more money, and feeling good somehow that the mass murderer gets to live another day, while at the same time running around and telling us how great Planned Parenthood is for killing unborn babies who didn't hurt anybody. They're like, how can y'all be for this and not be for that type thing? I get so sick of that. It's a very simple thing. Women want to talk about their bodies. What about the baby's body? That innocent baby who hasn't hurt anybody. Meanwhile, you look at the inmate. He is guilty. He's not innocent. He is guilty. He made his own choices, and he has to live or die with the results of those decisions. I like an old John Wayne quote. He said, "Life is tough, especially if you're stupid." Well, that's very true. Life is tough, especially if you're stupid. And if you do stupid stuff like killing other people, life's going to get tougher real fast. I think personally that there is a place for the death penalty in this country. But we need to do everything in our power to make sure that when it is done for the right reasons, to the right people, and that every bit of evidence has been used to come to that decision. It's not an easy decision. But sometimes it's the right decision. If anybody has any comments about that, you can always give us a call here at 800-8949. That's 423-800-8949. I guess the main ones that would be wanting to call in on that, though, sitting on death row, don't exactly have easy access to a phone. I mean, what would you do with them? They've got these great movies out where, like you had Devil's Island, where they took them down to the island off the coast of South America and let the inmates just run around all day. You had movies like Escape from LA and Escape from New York, where they put big walls up and just turned all the inmates out in them. But you know what? In those movies and on Devil's Island, the inmates were still killing each other because you can't change them. That's the one thing the liberals never quite understand, is that there's some things in this world that you just cannot change. And evil is one of them. Evil is evil is evil. It always has been, and it always will be. Anyway, I feel sorry for her family and for her children, but she made a bad decision, and she's had to pay for that bad decision. The death penalty in America may be living on borrowed time. They say, well, there's all these different nations over in Europe and whatnot that have done away with the death penalty. And some of them are starting to regret that decision. Sometimes the only way to keep an animal under control is by brute force. It's an unfortunate thing. It's just the way it is. That's like they say, sometimes you got to be a realist in this world. You got to be not the optimist, not the pessimist. You got to hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. And it's usually somewhere in between. Well, hopefully the weather will get better and we'll have a brighter day tomorrow. Thanks for listening. Been listening to Cowboy Up With Tex.